I'm 6'8" tall and actually went to college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina on a basketball scholarship. At 37, made the major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And part of what I did during my law enforcement career was I was a SWAT hostage negotiator. After that, I started a school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball. Now for the last 13 years or so, I've been battling a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trevor Zylstra. I'm a former correctional officer in the state of New Mexico and the state of Colorado. And we have a guest with us today by the name of Terry Tucker and my One Moment podcast team member, Kevin, who's graced us with his presence today. Thank God for that. We're just here excited to get into the meat and potatoes of this discussion with Mr. Terry and have a good episode and hopefully get people to learn some things about themselves that they don't know about yet. Mr. Terry, you go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Well, Trevor, Kevin, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today. Sure, I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall and actually went to college at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina on a basketball scholarship, despite having 3 knee surgeries in high school. When I graduated from college, I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. I was lucky. I found that first job in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. That was the good news. The bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. After Wendy's, I actually went to work for the hospital that cared for my father and my grandmother. I thought they did such a great job that I wanted to be part of that organization. And then at 37, made the major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And part of what I did during my law enforcement career was I was a SWAT hostage negotiator. After that, I started a school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball. But now for the last 13 years or so, I've been battling a rare form of cancer, a rare form of melanoma. And then just finally, my wife and I have been married for 32 years. We have one child, a daughter, who's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy and is an officer in the new branch of the military, the Space Force.
Amazing. That is really interesting how you seem to describe my life experience in different ways. I just got to say that my very first job on paper was Wendy's.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Did you like it?
I loved it. I had fun. It was a fun job.
Yeah, I thought it was a good company to work for. I mean, I was lucky to be, in the corporate headquarters during sort of the heyday when fast food was kind of flourishing. Not, everybody's off it today. It's, it's too fatty, too many additives, too many things like that. But I was there when, and Trevor, you might remember this. I don't know, Kevin, you're a little bit younger. There was a commercial called "Where's the Beef?" that, Clara Peller was running around, where's the beef? Where's the beef? And it ended up being picked up in the political arena and used as well. So it was just a fun time to be in that industry.
Absolutely. That was part of the reason I got into it. And it was when the salad bars were just getting introduced.
Yeah, when I started at Wendy's, I was in the field marketing area and eventually transitioned into the new product marketing area. So got to be involved a little bit with the introduction of salad, with the introduction of the breakfast day part. And for a while, we even looked at hot dogs, putting hot dogs into the stores, but found that they sort of cannibalized the hamburger sales. Anytime you put something into a store, somebody's not going to buy something else. And so you kind of have to weigh that decision on whether it's a good move from a product point of view.
Right. And I do remember all that. That was around 1985, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, that was when I got in.
That was before my time.
I was going
I
to
was
say,
born in
you're-
1990. So, Mr. Terry, great introduction, and absolute privilege and honor to have you on the show today. So, you're a former SWAT negotiator, former NCAA Division I basketball player. You also say that you're a cancer warrior and a cancer survivor at this moment, battling melanoma. I actually had an uncle pass away from melanoma, so my hat is off to you. You are in everyone's thoughts and prayers on our side of the aisle, and please let us know if there's anything we can do for you and your family.
thank you.
Right? Absolutely. And you wrote about briefly here. I know we're going to get into this, but you wrote about the four truths, that lead, to help others lead their uncommon and extraordinary life. And you've been on over 700 podcasts, radio and television shows, talking about a lot of things. So tell us about the four truths, and maybe how did you come to, I I guess, realize that.
It absolutely does. And I mean, I wish I had some great, epiphany story where, they came to me in a dream or something like that. But in all honesty, I was on a podcast called The Three Truths. And I thought, well, I better come up with what I believe are my three truths, or something that I feel is, and I kind of look at truth as what's foundational. What's not going to move based on where society goes or politics goes or whatever else life throws at me. What do I know that is my anchor that I can hang on to? And so I literally took a lot of time. I didn't just like, well, here are my three truths. I took a lot of time thinking about it, to the point where I ended up adding a fourth truth. And I'll give them to you. They're on a post-it note here in my office, so I see them multiple times during the day, and they constantly get reinforced in my mind. And the first one is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. The second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life, and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. The third one, and this is the one that I added, I felt it was important enough, and I look at it as kind of the legacy type of truth. And it's this: what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the last one, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And like I say, I look at those four truths as kind of the bedrock of my soul. I just think they're a good place to start to try to build quality life from.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think you bring that I think should be, because you speak about truth being foundational, right? And I actually had an interesting experience here. I was going through my career counseling course when I was in my grad program, and we had to do what is called a values type of deal, right? It was like a values project or something. And I found out my core foundational value is truth.
Mm.
Right. Everything else in my life rests on this one value. Right. So it's interesting that you bring that up. And it brought back that memory. And then I think another thing that you said that was important, uh, you said understanding that what you leave behind is what you weave in people's hearts. And I think that is very critical to understand, because you use the term legacy. I wish Ruben was here, because Ruben really speaks a lot on this, but he's got some medical appointments going on. But he always talks about leaving a legacy behind. What do I want others to think of me when I leave, when I go on to my next destination from here, wherever that might or might not be. And he talks about, he stresses and emphasizes, I want family time. I want my family to think good of me. I want people in my network to think good of me. I want people, when they watch these videos, right, of us, these episodes of us, I want people to really take away from things that I share. And he always talks about Trevor, he talks about something, and I'm sure you can help me with this. Embracing age, or age of, because he's what, 68, 69. He just turned 69, so he talks about embracing, your age, or embracing the aging area of life. And so he talks a lot about those things that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been asked on several shows that I've been on. How do you want to be remembered? What's important to you? And honestly, I don't want to be remembered. I'm not going to be. I mean, 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember I was here. But what I want now, and I think where social media kind of breaks down for us, is that we stay up here when we're on social media. Everything's great, everything's wonderful. We're kind of on this sort of almost fake or false type of this is me. And what I want now are the connections with other human beings. There's a psychology professor at the University of Chicago who does this experiment with his students. The idea is you go out and you get on a bus, and in 3 questions, you go deep with somebody. So you sit down next to somebody, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, how are you? Question 1, and I'm just making this up. Question 2, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a doctor. Okay. Question 3, have you always wanted to be a doctor? And it doesn't matter what they say. They could say, no, I grew up on a farm and I wanted to be a veterinarian, but X, Y, and Z happened. Or my mother was a doctor and died of breast cancer when she was 40, and I'm honoring her memory by becoming a doctor. Whatever they tell you, now they're telling you their why, their mission, their purpose in life. And we don't get to that level with people. We don't get to somebody's heart about why are you doing what you're doing with your life, or what made you do that, because we don't ask. Social media lets us just stay on the surface. We just scratch the surface. Everything's great. Everything's fine. Have a nice day. Let's move on. I want those deep connections. I want those relationships with other people. And that's why I enjoy being a hostage negotiator. I mean, you're working with people that are probably having the worst day of their life. I mean, if you're talking to me and your house is surrounded by the police, probably not having a good day. But it was, can I understand those people, and can I get to a point where those people trust me enough where I can get them out safely? So and you do that by connection. You do that by asking certain questions and things like that. So I want those connections today while I'm alive. I don't really care about what my legacy is down the road.
That makes good sense to me, because I can relate to that in the sense of my correctional career, but it was on a different level because you're in a secured environment, but yet there's still people, and they are people. No matter what has gone and gotten them there, they're still human beings. So you have to have the ability to leave a legacy in that moment of the time that you're interacting with them, to give them some kind of hope. That's the terribly discarded and diminished concept of being a correctional officer. It's generalized in the social term of guard. No, it's not a guard. It's a correctional officer, which is a credited version of law enforcement. A lot of law enforcement people will not even go into a facility unless they have the kind of duty gear that they're used to carrying. You can't do that in a secured environment,
Right.
because it's dangerous, but yet you're still there. So the concept of having a legacy is extremely important, because I worked in a mental health facility here in Colorado, and I had to deal with a certain individual that did one of the most heinous things, that was building up a culture that was against this person because of the things that they did. And he got rid of the whole thing. So it was like the activity that he did while in the facility. He was an interstate compact deal, so he didn't do the thing that he got in trouble for in Colorado. But to deal with that individual was a difficult thing, unless you could have a relationship. not a personal one, but one in a way that give him strength and encouragement to keep going and serving his time. He may not even ever, I'm certain he'll never get out, but still, that's what these individuals have to go through every single day. And being part of that is a really difficult thing to get through. That's
Yeah,
culture.
you're right. I mean, and that's something, and I think it goes to the concept of perspective, of keeping things in perspective, that these are human beings. And, we used to always try to keep ourselves in perspective. I may pull you over on a traffic stop. For you, it may be the scariest thing that happens to you all year. For me, it's the third traffic stop of the night. So it's not a big deal for me. For you, oh my God, the red and blue lights went off and I got pulled over. Whether I give you a ticket or not, is a lot of times going to depend on how you treat me. We always used to say the pen is mightier than the sword. So you know what? I'll just be happy to write a few tickets for you if you'd like that. But it was understanding that these people are human beings. I spent a number of years in the drug unit, and several of my colleagues had such disdain for the people that sold dope. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't partying with them or anything like that, but I always wanted to kind of understand the why behind it. Why do you do this? What goals do you have? What dreams do you have? What are you looking to do with your life? And what I found out fairly quickly is how sad it was that young men, especially young men in minority communities that were in their mid to late 20s, had no goals, had nothing they were aspiring to, had nothing that they wanted to do, because they knew in the line of work they were in, there was a very good chance that another dope dealer was going to shoot and kill them, take up their trade, and move on that way. So it was kind of like live fast, live hard, because tomorrow I might get shot. And that's a horrible way, I think, to look at your life. You're looking over one shoulder because the police might be coming. You're looking over the other shoulder because another drug dealer may be coming to take your life. So what a horrible way to live your life. But that's how so many of these young men live their life.
Yeah, and as we're talking about this, I'm sure you've heard of them, but I had to do a quick search on it, right? To pull it back up because I wanted to make sure I get it accurate. Well, Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite theorists of all times, right? This is what he said, right? And this is just a excerpt of what he talks about. He argues that even in the face of immense suffering, individuals can endure and find motivation by identifying a sense of purpose. And you spoke about finding a why, having a why in life, right? He famously stated, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." This idea emphasizes that discovering personal meaning is key to psychological resilience and fulfillment. So my question to you is, right, because we're talking about the drug dealers, right? And unfortunately, a lot of them, as you have said, they don't have that why, right? They're lost in this life of where I don't have any goals, as you said, besides I want to make some money right now. Right? And you spoke about, being a SWAT team negotiator. You spoke about being a basketball player too. Where do you feel like you had your why? And, when, right? When do you feel like you finally, that light bulb came on and said, "Oh, I have my why"? And, maybe if it was later on in life, like what were some things you went through to make you think or say, I got my why"?
Does anyone else have that one tool that makes building a website a breeze? In an era driven by digital change, WebHash is the indispensable tool that holds the key to effortless website creation. Create websites that endure, defy censorship, and bypass any single point of failure. As cutting-edge technology redefines reality, seize the power to build beyond limits. Join the Web3 revolution now and forge paths others can only dream of. Visit our site today and build your legacy. Building my own space on the web was always a grind until I hit up WebHash. Their no-code builder is my ace. It's swift and solid. It's like rocking a digital fortress that's immune to the typical shutdowns. Level up your web presence without stress. Ready to stake your claim in the digital realm? Dive into WebHash today, connect your Web3 wallet, and get started. They have multiple subscription plans, from a free version to a lifetime subscription. Check them out today at webhash.com. Most importantly, they sponsor the One Moment podcast, helping to raise awareness to critical topics in the healthcare field. Our official website was built using the WebHash platform. Throughout the projects that the One Moment movement built on WebHash, they stood behind and supported it all the way. Sign up and start building your website today. Don't forget to visit onemoment.chain.box and subscribe to our social media channels.
That's a great question. And I love Frankel, Man's Search for Meaning, great book. If you haven't read it, it's absolutely great. And Frankel also made the comment of talking about how when you've lost your ability to live, it's almost impossible to get it back. So the opposite of what you just said, Kevin, is absolutely true as well. If once you lose that, once those people gave up in those concentration camps, it was almost impossible for them to get back the will to live. So yeah, there, if you look at my resume, it kind of looks like a Super Ball went off in a room. It's just kind of, things are all over the place. But there really is kind of a backstory. And when you understand the backstory, the resume makes a little bit more sense. My paternal grandfather, my dad's dad, was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954. And in 1933, he was shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant at the time, always remembered the stories growing up that my grandmother told of that knock on the door of, Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us. Your husband's been shot. So when I expressed an interest in kind of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. So my dad had my entire life planned out, but it was the life my dad wanted me to live. It was not the life that I felt I was supposed to live. The purpose, the why, the mission behind it. So I had a choice when I graduated from college. As I mentioned, my father was dying of cancer. I could have said, hey, Dad, no, you're dying of cancer. Sorry about that. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to blaze my own trail. Or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. So understanding that backstory, my resume makes a little bit more sense. I went into business. My first two jobs were at Wendy's and then working for the hospital and business type of roles because that's what my dad wanted me to do. And I sort of joke, I did what every good son did. I waited until my father passed away and I followed my own dreams. But Kevin and Trevor, one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is that I never let my dream, I never let my purpose die. I could have said, hey, I'm making good money as a hospital administrator. This isn't a really taxing job. But with the support and the love of my family, I was able to kind of really switch and pivot to a job where, I was working nights and I was getting shot at and I was doing all that kind of stuff because I felt it was what I was supposed to do. Now, granted, I started it at 37, and 37 is pretty old to be getting into that line of work. I did take a whole lot more Tylenol in the police academy than my younger counterparts. But for the most part, I knew it was something I was supposed to do. And I knew someday I would do it. I didn't know when that someday would come. And for me, it came pretty late in life. But I just knew it wasn't something that was going to sort of fall off the map and I wasn't going to deal with it anymore. It was always part of who I was.
That makes great sense. In the ideation that I became a correctional officer in my early 40s, I was in academy with the 20-somethings and still keeping them up and advancing past some of them, to be honest with you. So, and then to become a accredited cert team operator was a big thing for me to come from the childhood that I grew up in, and me being a middle child. So you're the older son, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm the middle guy. The one, there's an older brother, there's a baby brother, and then there's the middle guy. He's just there. So it was hard to get into that. And what you're really explaining to me is like the legacy that I'm going to leave is leading me down a new road that I never thought was going to be possible for me, to be involved with some clinical professionals as a correctional officer, using my experience from a mental health facility and being a seg housing unit supervisor for about 3.5 years on third shift, 12 to 22 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's always in corrections, you know as well as I do, somebody's calling off or doesn't want to come in. So I had between 120 to 140 hours every 2 weeks. That's hard. So something else that's involved in my life, my baby brother passed away from melanoma back in 2002, but I love my baby brother quite a bit. And it seemed like the older brother and the younger brother all had the support of the family. Me, I didn't get so much of that. You know, I was emancipated at 15. I've been on my own ever since, doing the things like the rest of the world does, thinking they're normal, working my way through things. Like I said, I'd never even gotten to $20 an hour till I was in my 40s. And it was through a lot of hard work. I've done every kind of job there is physically out there. Concrete for 28 years, not all at one place, but brick, block, all the construction trades. I even did surveying for 4 years. That was a cool job. But then again, God had different plans for me. I did survive Hurricane Ivan down in lower Alabama, and even did some surveying post Hurricane Ivan, which was extremely, extremely hard. So the connection between you and I and our lives with cancer, it's, you know, my dad and both my brothers are gone. It's just me and my mom left, and there's not really a big connection there. Parents were divorced at a young age, and so there's not a whole lot of involvement still. So here I am on my own, but I'm in the stage in my life where I'm able to develop through as low as I am. I'm still being able to help other people, and that is amazing. That's the most amazing blessing that I have, to be able to show the children that I don't know. I have two kids. One's 32, the other one's going to be 18 this year, and neither one of them know me at all. I'm not involved in their life. That's really hard. Imagine how much of a mental strain that was on me. And I'm still striving forward. I have a permanent handicap now that's even further complicating things. So I'm on the verge, but I'm hanging on by that shred like no other shred I've ever hung on to. My spiritual relationship is solid. My professional relationship is solid with my brother Kevin and Ruben. And we're sorry Ruben's got his medical issue today, but we sure do wish he was here, because it's like the triangle. There's the big guy at the top point, and I'm over here on one side, and the younger guy's over on the other side. It's a big, perfect triangle. So, yeah, it's really good to have had you explain the list of 4 things to get done, and I'm currently living it. It's amazing. Thanks
Yeah,
for
I think,
doing
you
what
know,
you.
and I think, Trevor, you kind of made a good point. I mean, you've got to find meaning in your misery. You know, you've got to find that reason that you're going through. I don't believe we suffer or we experience these things in vain, that there's no reason for it. I think we're supposed to learn something from this. And I've been asked, hey, if you could live your life over again without having cancer, would you do it? And honestly, I don't think I would. I think cancer has made me a much better human being. I always say I've done more living in the 13 years that I've been dying of cancer than I've done in my entire life. And I gave you my resume. I've had a pretty good life up to the point where I got sick. But you've got to understand that what you're going through, that there's a lesson there, that you're supposed to learn something from what's happening. And so many people just, like, oh, this is horrible, this is terrible. I got to tell everybody what's going on. I got to throw everything out there. And I'm not one of those kind of people. I don't need to talk about it. I just need to deal with it. And I've learned a lot from cancer, and I'll give you just two quick things that I have. Number one, I honestly don't think you know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. It doesn't have to be cancer. It doesn't have to be an illness. It could be whatever, And Trevor, you certainly have had, parents divorce, things like that. There's certainly been some adversity in your life. And the second thing cancer has taught me is that I just don't think oh shoot. See, this is what happens when you get old. You have something and it pops right out of your mouth, right out of your mind. And it just did for me. Son of a gun. I am sorry. I'm sure it'll pop. Probably when I take a shower tonight, it'll pop back in. So it's, I apologize. I'm having a senior moment. So
it's okay. At least you don't have a traumatic brain injury with a fractured skull.
Which is right.
Which is what I have now.
So you started that. Well, you probably answered it. Okay, you probably did, because I've got it written down. One of my questions, right? Because I think you're right. Right? We go through things to learn about us, right? To learn who we are, what some of our values and principles are. And I was asked this not too long ago. I think around the end of the year, or beginning of the year, about has my goalpost moved, right? And I'm like, no, it hasn't moved. It's still there. I'll just have to go a different route and a different path to get to my goal, right? It's still there, right? But I've had to go through some things the last 2 years to make me realize that, hey, maybe that one path wasn't the best fit. It probably was. It probably wasn't. I don't know what the outcome of that is. So out of the things that you've done, right, your jobs, and you answered this with when you were answering about cancer, right? With everything that wasn't a part of your why, right? What do you feel like you learned, right? What is something that maybe it helped you to build to your why? I know you answered part, some of that, as far as, when you were diagnosed with cancer, but there's a lot of people who struggle with finding that why. Oh my gosh, I'm working at Dollar General, or hey, oh my gosh, I'm working at Wendy's, I'm working here. I don't really have a sense of purpose, right? What is some things that, maybe it helped you when you finally got to your why, and maybe even through cancer?
In the heart of the city, a vision was born, not just a piece of clothing, but a movement. Vital Apparel reflects not just the raw edge of the streets, but the spirit of innovation to bring about change in mental health worldwide. It's more than a style, it's a statement, a blend of comfort with an attitude made for those who refuse to be average. Embrace the culture, ignite your passion, and wear the revolution. Discover your new favorite piece today and be part of something larger than life. Visit our link now at vtlapparel.com to grab your next outfit. Use promo code ONEMOMENT to get 15% off your order. Why support us? The founders of Vital Apparel, Hung Dao and Alex Kozub, sought out to raise awareness, seeking to change the stigma around mental health. 5% of their profits are donated to Brain Research Foundation, furthering the research in mental health. Vital Apparel sponsors the One Moment podcast. We partnered with one another so that together we can make a global impact on mental health, substance use, and suicide, saving lives one moment at a time around the world. Help us break the stigma. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast and to connect with us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on our episodes. Subscribe now. Some photos in this ad were created by Grok.
Sure. So, two things as you were asking that question that sort of came to mind. One was kind of how we perceive our lives. And the other was, and I'll give you the second one first, and I'll go back to how we perceive our lives in a minute. And I wish I would have known this earlier in my life. And if your audience remembers nothing I say today, remember this. This is, I think, a nugget that I wish I would have learned earlier. It's more important who you work with and who you work for than it is the work that you do. Find people that care about you. Find people that are willing to invest in you. Find people that want to see you succeed, and hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together. Because nobody is successful in a vacuum. We don't do this. Taylor Swift goes out on stage as a billionaire, you know, and it looks like it's Taylor Swift. Well, Taylor Swift had thousands of people behind her that make her concerts and her promotional tours, her marketing material, make all that happen. Nobody is successful in a vacuum. Find those people that want to see you succeed, hitch your wagon to those people and climb your mountains together. And the other thing I will say is, and I wish I would have learned this, another thing I wish I would have learned when I was younger, because I've done this. You take these sort of arbitrary mileposts along your life and you say, okay, by the time, and I'm again making this up, by the time I'm 30 years old, I want to be making $100,000 a year. Or by the time I'm 35 years old, I want to be married with 2 children. And those arbitrary mileposts come and go, and you're not making $100,000 and you're not even in a serious relationship. And you say to yourself, well, something must be wrong with me. My life must not be going in the right direction. And the best thing I've ever heard is this is from a guy by the name of Jeff Wetzler, who wrote a book called Ask. And he talks about looking at your life in terms of decades. So he said, instead of just putting that arbitrary milepost out there, look at your life. So in your 20s, do everything. Do anything that remotely interests you whatsoever. You know, I want to go to a chamber music concert. Well, I don't know if I like chamber. Just go to it. You know, I want to parasail. I want to play rugby. I want to play the piano, whatever it is. And also make all kinds of mistakes. Screw up all over the place, not for the sake of making mistakes, but for the sake of what you're going to learn while you make those mistakes. And then he says in your 30s, find those 2 or 3 things that you really want to dig into, that you really enjoy, and dig into those things. And then he says in your 40s, when you're older, you're more mature, your prefrontal cortex has come together. You understand how life works. You understand about politics. You're probably financially more secure. Find that one thing and dig into it. And then he says in your 50s and your 60s and beyond, you can reap the rewards. You can reap the benefits of what you did in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. And I wish I would have known that when I was younger, because, you know, I'd hit those mileposts and it was like, well, I'm not making that kind of money, or I'm not in that relationship. What can I do? Or what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. We're not on, you know, I always say we're kind of on God's time. We're not on our time. And God's time is different than our time. So don't feel that you haven't made it in a certain area because you haven't hit that arbitrary milepost. Look at the bigger picture. And when you look at your life in decades, I think it gives you a lot more latitude to make mistakes, to kind of figure things out as you're going and things like that, and not be so, I mean, I don't even set goals anymore. We've got to have we're goal driven. I look at my processes. Are the things that I'm doing leading me to where I want to be? And are those things optimized? Are they the best that they can be for me? And if they're not, I need to change them or work on them or fix them or whatever I need to do. And I figure the goals will take care of themselves. It's more the processes that I try to focus on.
Well, and you know, I love the fact that you speak about that book. One of the things that you reminded me of when I first became a clinical supervisor, and I've shared this before, right? My clinical soup at that time would say, hey Kev, go over here and do this and then do that and then come back and let me know. And I'd go over there and do it and completely mess it up, screw it completely up. And I go back to him and he'll like, well, hey Kev, how did it go? And I'm like, well, Scott, well, I messed it up, Scott. How do I fix it? And so he might get mad or he might start laughing, one of the two, but then he'd always end up saying, dude, you got 14,762 more mistakes to go before you catch up to me. Congratulations, great job. So you reminded me, you know, of him saying that, and because it's so critical, right? Like when we're in our 20s and even sometimes early 30s, right? Our prefrontal cortex isn't there, so we don't think about things in a complex manner, right? We think about maybe some gray and black, but we don't see the gray. Some white and black, but we don't see the gray, right? And it takes, as you were saying, those mistakes, you know, Dude, just go out there and do. You can't make them. You cannot live life. You cannot learn anything if you're not doing anything. You can't learn about life or even mistakes unless you're doing something. Uh, and it's funny because I was saying this yesterday, or day before, I forget. But I was at work, and I'm not gonna, share anything that I don't think my supervisor or my job would, not want me to share. But I was asked, did I fill out my survey? Right, it's the annual whatever. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I said I sure did, and I was messing. Everybody knows my personality, so I'm like, boss lady, I done gave you and everyone else here the worst reviews ever, this, that, and the third. Right? So everybody was laughing. I said, no. I said, seriously, no. I said, I've already completed it. I said, and I gave her some kind of feedback on what I put. I said, I don't have any complaints. I said, when I make a mistake, I said, this is across the board. I said, y'all don't shame me. Y'all don't guilt me. Y'all don't, none of that. I said, y'all say, hey, you did this, you could have did this differently, right? Or, you always have the educational piece behind you to help me grow as an employee. I said, so I'm grateful for the way y'all supervise and the way y'all manage, because a lot of people don't do that, right? Life is about learning. It doesn't matter if it's a basketball coach or a supervisor, a therapist, or even a SWAT negotiator. It's all about learning, right? It's all about learning and growing and adapting and changing. And I think, hey, I think that should be my 4 truths, right? But no, I think you shared a lot of, when you were sharing that, I think there's a lot to just get from that perspective. Go out there in your 20s, make a whole bunch of mistakes, do everything and mess a lot of things up. Because it's key to life. That's a very key principle. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also, in your 20s, you're not as invested. You're probably not married. You probably don't have kids relying on you and stuff like that. So you can afford to make those mistakes, even if those mistakes lend you to getting fired. And oh gosh, there's a Jason Pfeiffer. This is the guy's name. Jason Pfeiffer's a guy who he's the editor in chief of Entrepreneur magazine. And his story is kind of interesting. He graduated from college with a journalism degree, and he went to work for a small town newspaper. And he said, I wasn't really happy. I wasn't fulfilled. It wasn't my purpose. He said, I wanted to be an editor. And he said, so I left that job and I became an editor. And when I learned this certain type of editing, I left that job and I went to another company. I learned another type of editing. And then I went to another company after I learned that and learned a third type of editing. And I think what a lot of people do is they get comfortable. They don't want to. Once I've learned what I came to learn here, well, it's time to move on. Most people don't have that philosophy. Most people are like, hey, it's safe. I'm making good money. Things are good. I don't want to live, or I don't want to take a chance. I don't want to step outside that comfort zone and go somewhere else and learn something else. But he absolutely attributes his success to becoming the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur magazine to the fact that when he learned what he needed to learn, he moved on. And he found another company to teach him a different form of editing. And when he learned that, he moved on again. But we don't like taking those chances. Those are scary. Those take us outside our comfort zones. But we also all know that the only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to improve is if you step outside those comfort zones and do things that make you uncomfortable.
That's interesting that you should say that, because number one, the first thing that came to my mind was negotiating. You got to be able to have the ability to negotiate your way through the paths that you create for yourself. Sometimes that's not positive, sometimes it is. You have to deal with those things that happen throughout it, throughout the whole process. Another thing that brings to my mind also is when I was surveying, my survey party chief JR used to always say, Trev, you gotta always keep learning throughout your whole life. No matter what we're doing here, no matter why we're doing it now, you always got to be open to learning. Don't ever stop or you'll start dying. Well, you get into a set of circumstances or a relationship with certain people, your learning is stifled, and that doesn't do anything productive for you.
You shared a lot too, about going through this life and experiencing things and not being afraid to step out on faith, right? What I have found is, and I don't know, maybe you got a different experience, but I'd like to get your perspective on it. But I was working with somebody, and this is across the board a lot with a lot of people. I see a lot that people are afraid to take that next step because it's the fear of the unknown. And so when I work with people personally and professionally, it's kind of almost the same track here. Like, hey, hold up a piece of paper, right? That piece of paper is as thin as fear, or fear is as thin as that piece of paper. Once you step through it, you realize you have nothing to fear but fear itself, right? And I know that's a stupid cliche, but it really makes sense, and it brings home to people like the realization of their decisions, of their choices. So what has been your experience with that?
I agree. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that holds people back from reaching their dreams or going after their dreams is fear. And there's an entrepreneur by the name of Ed Milet, and he talks about the 4 types of people in the world. And when I first heard this, I was like, I got to think about this for a while. I'm not sure I agree with this. But the more I sort of contemplated it and went back and looked at it, I thought, yeah, it's true. And so, and I'll give you, they're real short. So the first group that he talks about are the unmotivated. And he said, that's the vast majority of people you will run into in your life. Well, why are they unmotivated? They've never even looked for their purpose, let alone found it and lived it. So they're unmotivated, vast majority of people. The second group he talks about are the motivated. And he said, it's kind of a carrot and stick approach to life. If I do this, I will get that. He says it's kind of low level, but it works for a lot of people to have a very happy and successful life. The third group he talks about are the inspirational people. The word inspiration coming from 2 words, in spirit. So if you're an inspirational person, you move people with your energy. And then the last group he talks about are the aspirational people, where people aspire to be like you. And I think we set our goals too low. We think too small. Very few people think what it means to be amazing and successful and do something totally out of their, it's like, I could never do that. There's a great story. Jesse Itzler is a owner of the Atlanta Hawks and the National Basketball Association. And he's married to a woman by the name of Sarah Blakely. And Sarah Blakely started a woman's undergarment company called Spanx. And Itzler tells the story about it. She started that company with $5,000 and 1 prototype. That's all she had. And she's turned it into a multi-million, if not $1 billion company. And the point he was trying to make was, we all want things to line up, So he said, if she would have waited, because she knew about sales, but she didn't know about marketing. She didn't know about distribution. She didn't know about manufacturing. She didn't know about legal. She didn't know about HR. He said, if she would have waited until everything was perfect, until everything lined up, he said, I guarantee you somebody else would have come up with that idea and run with it. And his point was, wherever you are, just start. Whatever you're trying to do in your life, just start there. Figure it out as you go along. We all like to think that, making it to the top of the mountain or to the end of the rainbow, that's where we arrive and that's where we're successful. What we don't realize is it's the journey to get to the top of the mountain or to get to the end of the rainbow that really is what life is all about. And the last thing I'll say about it is this, and I wish I would have learned this earlier too. a lot of times I think we like to think that we start at A and we kind of go on this straight line to Z. And what I found, and I should have learned this because I knew it from basketball, is that you start at A and you work really hard and you start moving up and then you plateau and then you work even harder and then you get worse and you go down and then you work even harder and then maybe you get up a little bit more. You're always moving in a line towards Z, let's say, but life is not linear. Life is up and down and plateau, and I'm working harder, but I'm getting worse. Keep working harder. Eventually, if you keep doing that, you will get to where you want to be. But so many people like, I'm working my butt off and I'm not getting any better. I'm just going to quit. Well, you can do that. But think about the people who have just this much grit in their life. They can be anything they want because you've got so many people that are totally unmotivated and could care less about being a competitor or doing anything with them in their lives. So if you've got even a little bit of grit in your life, it's amazing what the world can be.
Feeling lost or alone, struggling with unbearable trauma or addiction. Every day feels heavier than the day before. The weight of unaddressed emotions and problems can leave you paralyzed. On the One Moment podcast, we are aligned with the vision and mission of the Place to Heal. Founded in Sanford, North Carolina, the Place to Heal is a growing multi-specialty mental health and substance use practice dedicated to facilitating healing and personal development. Our team of compassionate clinicians are committed to providing evidence-based therapeutic interventions tailored to each individual's unique journey. We are passionate about empowering our clients to overcome challenges and achieve emotional wellness. The Place to Heal hosts and sponsors the One Moment podcast. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast and to be connected to the Place to Heal. Follow us on social media for more content.
Yeah, no, you definitely agree with you on that one. We all three were when we started out on this deal, right? To kind of give you some of our history here too. It was around on the beginning of March, second week of March, we were all kind of in the slump, right? It was right before we did our suicide awareness episode. We're all three meeting the night before. We're kind of in the slumps a little bit, and not that we wanted to quit by any means, but it was like some of us were feeling imposter syndrome, like, hey, we've still trying to put this thing, whatever together, and still trying to figure out what platforms we're going to use, this, that, and everything else. Well, long story short, Ruben had asked, and man, I'm telling you, I hate that you would love Ruben. He is a dude. The dude is full of wisdom. Okay, but he was like, Kev, have you pulled the analytics on who's watching, who's this, that, and the third? And I said, no, I haven't. And I'm like, let me just go ahead and log in real quick, kind of see what's going on, what the deal is. And I saw the analytics just off of one platform, And I read it out to him. I said, man, we got people in Mexico, Canada, Israel, Australia. Like I started naming off all the countries, right? Germany, UK, Rome, India. Like we got, it was at least 10 to 15 different countries at that time that was just that was watching our content, and that was just on one platform. And I'm like, and then that's when we came to the realization, as you were saying, like, hey, we've got an opportunity here to be that, right, to do exactly what you were just sharing about. And so in that moment, it was like, wow, like we got the opportunity of a lifetime to really make, help impact globally the mental health and substance use, field, suicide field, all of those things, right? And so we set out like that kind of like gave us that determination. Hey, this is where our focus is. And so we started reaching out and getting sponsorships, getting all of these, all of the stuff that we do now. We solidified the platforms that we're using for content creation, for getting the information out there, for sharing the so I mean, we really worked double time to really put a lot of stuff together. We're still not even nowhere near done, but it's like we shared, I think it was the last um episode, I think it was right before we hit the record button. The young man was asking, and he's a great guy. He was asking, what type of studio we have, and I'm like, we got no big camera crew. Only thing we have is a basement, a crappy Wi-Fi signal. Where Trevor is. Yeah, and we have all of.
I'm just going through some
You're still
technical
breaking up, my
difficulties.
friend.
I'm just going through some technical
You're still
difficulties.
breaking up.
Oh,
That is okay. And so that's what I had explained to him. I said, we got, like, this is all on us. Like, we make no money doing this. And our goal isn't, only way we make money is if somebody buys something from Vital Apparel, uses our promo code, maybe W Energy, right? Which is an all natural energy drink, and uses our promo code. Outside of that, we don't do this for the money. We do this to help people. And so, it is exactly what you were saying. Our path in this whole deal wasn't just a straight line. It's started. The first episode we still have up. The first episode was a complete mess, but we didn't let it stop us.
Right.
We never, not once, let that first episode stop us. We just got back to the drawing board and, all right, well, we can't do it at the library anymore. So what's the next option? Okay. We've already got the equipment. We need more options here, and so it was just one foot in front of the other. And now, I mean, we're doing a lot of good stuff in the field. So you're right. It is about having that determination. It's about having that why. It's about having all of these things.
It is. And you made a good point, Kevin, about imposter syndrome. And I remember I was on a podcast with a guy who had been in the NFL, National Football League here in the United States, big guy, like 6'8", like 310 pounds. And we did this podcast. And afterwards we were talking, and he said, Terry, when I started my podcast, I didn't think anybody would listen. I didn't think anybody would care. And I said, Marcus, how could you not think anybody would care? You've made it to the pinnacle of your sport. You've made it to the very top. How could you think you would not have something to contribute to these conversations that would make people's lives better? But that's just it. Even people that have made it to the top, we all get to that point in life, I think, where we start to doubt ourselves. Am I any good? Is somebody gaining anything from the time we're spending? What's the value that you're adding here? And I think the thing you've got to understand, and I'll tell you a quick story. This is a nurse story. I'm still being treated for tumors I have in my lungs. And this is a nurse that I met several years ago when she was about 25 years old, so relatively young into the nursing field, and was learning how to do things on the unit where I was treated. And about 6 months later, she was taking care of me by herself. And she came in and she sat down and she said, Terry, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I'm a little uncomfortable telling it to you. I mean, and Kevin, I was like, I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, what do you say when somebody says that to you? And I said, well, I hope you decide you want to tell me the story. I think I would enjoy hearing it. Next couple hours, she's in and out doing what she needs to do for my care. And then comes back in, sits down again and says, all right, here's the story. She said, when I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I had a very good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I had talked to my family. I was going to quit nursing and I was going to go to work for Amazon. And she said, and then I met you. And she said, I see what you go through. I have a very bad reaction, a very violent reaction to the medicine that I'm given. And she said, I see you keep coming back every single day for your treatments. And then I went back in your file when I was taking care of you, and I read everything that you've been through. Your foot was amputated, your leg was amputated, all these things. And she said, when I finished reading your story, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that just me living my life, just me doing what I'm supposed to do, had such a positive impact on this young woman. So, anybody who's listening to us that thinks your life doesn't matter or nobody cares about my story, I can promise you there are people out there that are watching how you handle your adversity in life and would give almost everything they have just to walk 5 minutes in your shoes. So don't think that your life or your story doesn't matter.
Yes, I've got no words to even say on that one. And I think, when people hit this bottom, right? Rock bottom, it could be a physical, emotional, because you've hit multiple bottoms, right? Everything from a physical bottom to, emotional, potentially even a spiritual bottom. And so I think the thing to remember is, as you said, is life isn't meant to be always a steady upward climb 100%. It's like, hey, let's let somebody else take the wheel. Well, that's going to be mountaintops, mountain curves. It's going to be snowy roads, icy roads. Everything that we're going to be on is going to be, we're going to be driving through the desert. We're going to be, driving, probably even floating on the water sometimes. Right. But the thing is, as you said, always keeping going, continuing to go regardless of, I can't, I might not have any 100% control over this thing called life, because it's going to throw these curveballs, it's going to throw these fastballs, it's going to throw these uphill balls or whatever. I'm not a sports baseball person. It's going to throw all of these spiraling balls and everything else at me. The goal is to not give up, no matter what. I matter, you matter. Oh, that reminds me of the episode we did with Joseph Wooten. Yeah, the I matter, you matter. And so regardless of, it doesn't matter what what the outcome is, what the circumstances are, all lives matter. So yeah, you are definitely right on that one. Is just never giving up, regardless of. So if there was one thing, right, that you wanted somebody to take away from this episode, right? One from, any of the videos, even the full episode, what would you want them to take away? Yeah, let's start with that question.
That's a great question. And I guess I'll tell you a story that I think will a true story. Happened back in the 1950s at Johns Hopkins University here in the United States. There was a professor by the name of Richter who was doing experiments with rats. And he wanted to see basically how long the average rat could tread water. So he put rats in a tank of water that was over their head. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes. And then it would sink and drown. He's like, okay, 15 minutes, great. So then he took another group of rats and put them in the exact same tank of water. But this time he watched them. And just as those rats were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took those exact same rats and put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about that. First time, 15 minutes. Second time, 60 hours, which taught me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. That if we know we're doing the right thing, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, but at some time, if we know we're doing the right thing, there's a good chance we'll get to where we want to be. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. We quit, we give up, we give in long before our physical bodies do. And I'll go right back to the 4 truths. What's the first one? Control your mind, or your mind is going to control you, because your brain tells you this hurts, it's uncomfortable, stop it. And so we do that. But we've also learned from marathon runners that marathon runners at some point hit a wall. Like, I don't think I can go on. I don't think I can do this. I've used up all my carbohydrates. But they also know that if they keep moving, if they keep pushing forward, eventually they'll break through that and get that second win that allows them to finish the race. That's true of us in life. When life says, hey, this hurts, it's uncomfortable, stop it. If we don't listen to that, if we keep moving forward, it's amazing what we can do in life. So the importance of hope and the understanding of we are so much more than we ever thought we could if we stop listening to the negativity, to the limits that our brain puts on us and push forward. It's amazing what we can do.
Definitely agree, and thank you for that. I think having that hope and having that inspiration and just remind and I think it's the Marines, right, or the Army, or one of the two that says pain is weakness leaving the body, right? Exactly what that means. So, what would your call to action be if you had to give a call to action to anybody watching this episode, watching any of the videos? What is your call to action?
I'm going to quote another line from a book. The book is called Farewell to Arms. It was written by Ernest Hemingway. And it's kind of a semi-autobiographical account of his time as an ambulance driver for the Italian army during World War I. And the line in the book is this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. My call to action would be understand that from time to time, life is going to beat you to your knees. But if you can keep moving forward, if you can keep putting one foot in front of the other, eventually you're going to come out the other end. And when you come out the other end, you're going to be a much more stronger and resolute individual.
Absolutely. Folks, anybody who's watching this episode, Mr. Terry has brought a lot of experience, a lot of endeavors, a lot of challenges that he's been through. Please remember that regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the situation, you matter, and to never give up. All right. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on X, Focus Minds, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. Our primary two channels for our full episodes is Spotify and YouTube. And we're also on TikTok too. How do I forget that? Right? Listen, it's been an absolute privilege.
Imagine a day where fatigue doesn't stand a chance, where clarity perks up your focus as the clock ticks on. Discover W Energy, the drink that transforms ordinary moments into opportunities. With no sugar and flavors that feel like gourmet art, each sip stirs your senses, readying you for greatness. W Energy is a focus energy drink that contains no sugar and is available in a variety of unique flavors. Their coffee fruit cherry extract is the star of the show. This ingredient is what makes W unique and helps to provide smooth and effective focus and energy, making it perfect for anyone who needs to conquer a task. W flavors are created with one goal in mind: to taste unlike any other beverage. We combine bold and unique flavor combinations to craft an experience for your tongue with each sip. W achieves its smooth, effective focus with a high-end tasting experience while using no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial color or dyes. Every product they create follows the same philosophy: be effective, be clean, and taste as good as nature will allow. Use promo code OneMoment to enjoy 10% off their products. And most importantly, they sponsor the One Moment podcast. They are helping to raise awareness of mental health, substance use, suicide, and much more around the world, seeking to make a global impact, reducing stigmas and changing lives one moment at a time. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast. Follow us on our social media channels for more information and to stay up to date with our episodes.